Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Welcome to the Los Angeles City Historical Society. And I am Danny Jensen, the program's chair. And we're excited for our guest tonight. We have Mimi Slawoff who's written Oldest Los Angeles. And she's going to be sharing some highlights from her book and sharing some really fun secrets and history of Los Angeles. So I'll turn it over to Mimi.
Thank you, Danny. I'm excited to be here and happy to share my book, Oldest Los Angeles. First, a little bit just about me. I was born in Hollywood, raised in Burbank, and my immigrant Bulgarian parents bought a house in Burbank, and we just always loved to explore the local area. I started writing about Los Angeles as a reporter for the Los Angeles Daily News, and covered quite a bit of LA for several years. And then when I became a mom, I have 3 kids, started writing for parenting magazines and about things to see and do in Los Angeles. And we just explored LA. It was a hands-on learning experience for my kids because there's always something new to learn. I write for AAA and for a few different print and digital publications. During COVID, when I'm a travel writer, but during COVID, I could not travel, not very much, and I spent a good portion of that year, the first year, exploring Los Angeles, researching and the oldest places. And that is how Oldest Los Angeles came to be. Okay. I already spoke a little bit about myself, so I won't go into that. Like I said, during COVID, I was able to get out and explore LA. As you know, we have 88 incorporated cities, home to over 10 million people. And it's amazing to me that there are over 200 languages spoken in LA County. The challenge to writing the book was organizing it because LA County is so big and I wanted to include as much of LA County as possible. So it's divided into 9 regions of LA with about 84 little vignettes. I'll explain that. First, I wanted to start off with some places. Also, the book is a mix of places that you'll know and hopefully places that you don't know about. The oldest cemetery, it was the first time I took a little visit there, and it was established in 1877, Evergreen Cemetery, and it's huge. It's got graves from the 1830s because people, before there was a cemetery, were of course burying their loved ones in their yards. And right now, today, there are over 300,000 internments with dozens of prominent LA figures, including the Lancashire and the Van Nuys families. Adjacent to the cemetery is the LA County Crematorium and Cemetery, where each year over 1,700 homeless and unidentified people are cremated and buried in a single grave. I found that pretty fascinating. To the right, you can see Pink's, which of course, I'm sure everybody knows. If you've had the pleasure of speaking with the owner, Richard Pink, it's his parents who opened up the hot dog stand, which pretty much still looks the same. Back then, hot dogs were 10 cents. And today they're a bit more, but there are many combinations. He was telling me that the most popular hot dogs are the Brando and the Martha Stewart. And many of them, as you know, are named after celebrities. The Hollywood Bowl, of course, that's just a classic, iconic LA feature. It's one of the largest natural amphitheaters in the world. It seats 18,000 people, and it's been the summer home of the LA Philharmonic since July 11th in 1922. I found this to be interesting. The San Gabriel Mission actually has the oldest grapevine, over 250 years old there. I spoke with Mark Blatty from the LA Vintners, and he was thrilled because when he went, he was able to get some clippings from the grapevine, the mother grapevine, And he took them home and planted them and was able to make an Angelica wine, which is a type of port wine that people would have drank back then. Of course, and here we are, El Pueblo de Los Angeles Historical Monument, where it all began with 44 immigrants back in 1781. I love bringing my friends and family here when people visit from out of town. We'll take the Metrolink downtown and just spend a few hours exploring the different buildings. I'm sure you've been there. You know that many of them are open as businesses and free museums, really great museums there. And the plaza, which was built as a monument to the early settlers, was then and now a gathering place. So, I think it's fun. My husband and I will take the train down for Cinco de Mayo and just enjoy the festive ambiance. The Avila Adobe, I like taking friends and family through here too, because you can actually walk through. It's each room is decorated in the period of the time. And if you notice out in the courtyard, there are grapevines, and it's the same grapevines that are from the mission, and they're thriving. The oldest gold discovery actually happened in Santa Clarita. It was 6 years before Sutter's Mill, the discovery at Sutter's Mill. Placerita Canyon is a really pretty area anyway, and if you haven't been there, it's they have hiking trails, but you can actually go to the tree where the gold nuggets were found. And as you can see from the slide, a rancher had fallen asleep under there and had a dream about liquid gold. And when he woke up, he started digging for these onions, and he found the gold nuggets. If you want to go see the tree, you just go to Placerita Canyon, and there's a little paved trail. It's called the Heritage Trail. You'll walk underneath a tunnel, which has a mural of California history. And it's just a quiet little place to enjoy. This was fun. So the oldest hotel is actually on Catalina Island, which I love. And it was built on the heels of the Hotel del Coronado. They're sister hotels. They look similar, but they're very different. This is much smaller, the Glenmore. The rooms are very nice. It's a quaint hotel, but the rooms have nice amenities. But the hallways are a little bit crooked. They kind of veer around. It's like a little maze inside. But I like that they still use the old-fashioned keys, a little clunky, but charming at the same time. During World War II, the Catalina Island was occupied by the U.S. military, and the hotel was used for trainees. Vroman's Bookstore. I love this place. It's not only the oldest in LA County, but in Southern California. And as you may know, it was founded by Adam Vroman. He and his wife moved out here for the better weather. She was ill, and he had sold his book collection to raise the capital to open the bookstore. After he died, he left the bookstore to several employees, including Alan Sheldon, whose descendants have been the owners for decades. And they've stayed relevant. Romans has stayed relevant over the years because of the different programs that they offer, story time and speakers. Most recently, about maybe 1.5, 2 years ago, they opened a wine bar called the Wine Bar 1894, obviously named after the the year that the bookstore was opened. I enjoy, I've been to Fuguetto before, and I'm sure you have too, but while I was researching the book, it was the first time I spoke with Brian Quito, who's the owner and third generation. He's a master manju maker, mochi, and I thought it was funny. He said that his dad had always told stories about his grandfather, Seichi, sorry, Fu and Quito. And Brian said, my dad was always telling us all these big stories and how my grandfather was actually the inventor of the Chinese fortune cookie. And how could that be, right? Because this is a Japanese confectionery. But then in 2003, Brian received a letter from the Chinese American Historical Society of New England, who said that it was his grandfather. He didn't create the fortune cookie with the fortune, but he produced the sweet cracker on the outside of the cookie. The oldest observatory. This is another great day trip. You take Angeles Crest Highway all the way up, narrow little road. It's not one huge complex, the way the Griffith Observatory is a very large building. These are separate telescopes, and the views from up there are just beautiful. And when it was built, mules had to haul all the separate components of the telescopes on a long dirt road. This is a fun place. If you've been there, the Golden Gopher. It's been around since 1905, which means it has a dual liquor license, and I believe the only one. So you can go there, buy liquor to go. The sign is still there. President Roosevelt was said to have he rode up on horseback for a drink. Said Moses, he's a local businessman who likes buying really cool bars and then restoring them. So he was sad to see that it had, over time, the bar became a dump for drugs and prostitution. So he bought it. He says he rescued it in 2002 and turned it into a rock and roll dive bar, keeping the vintage elements. So when you walk in, it's kind of dark. It has a nice old-fashioned bar, very cozy. The bartenders are really friendly. The Southwest Museum, it's interesting. So it was built by or founded by Charles Loomis, and if you've been there, it's on the top of Mount Washington, and he felt that a museum needed to be built high up, so you would have to walk up for knowledge. But then a few years later, they ended up building elevators to make it more accessible. Still, over the years, the museum suffered a little bit financially and eventually merged with the Autry. There's still two separate facilities. I think it's just a beautiful museum. And the age-old question, right? Who created the French dip sandwich? Philippe the Original, which is the one that I had mostly gone to. And when I used to bring my kids downtown, we would go there. Researching the book, I went to Kohl's. I was curious. I wanted to try the two different types of sandwiches. And usually at this point, when I do these book events live, I'm always curious with a show of hands, or, if anyone has a preference, if they've been to both. There's a chat box if anybody does want to, let's see, chime in. Let me see. Okay. So Philippe is more of a daytime. You go there, it's very casual. You eat family style. And then Kohl's is different because it usually opens around 5 in the afternoon, and has a very cool interior as well. What makes it unique, I think, is the building itself. It's on the ground floor of the 10-story Pacific Electric building, which in the 1900s was the tallest skyscraper, and it was the main train station for the Pacific Electric Railway. So it just has a very different vibe. It has a full bar, unlike Philippe, and in the evening, there is a speakeasy in the back. Well, again, Said Moses also owns this, and he named it The Varnish. So it's a pretty cool place to go. I think about all those years that I would walk by on the pier and never really question the Looff Hippodrome. I remember being on the merry-go-round on the carousel inside, but I didn't realize that it was actually the last work of Charles Looff. And It's very unique. It's very whimsical. Obviously, it's known for its architecture, which is more of a Moorish Byzantine style. The carousel inside there now is not the original one. It was replaced in 1922. The carousel still has hand-carved wooden soldiers, so it fits the theme very well. The Hollyhock House, I actually had only been there once. That too was during COVID. It was closed at the time, but they were nice enough to give me a private tour so I could see it. And I think it has a very interesting history. As you know, it was built for Eileen Barnsdall, and hollyhock flowers were her favorite. So she thought Frank Lloyd Wright would be the perfect person to design the house, which he started to in a garden style, taking advantage of California's Mediterranean weather. He built the front doors. They're very formidable, with the tone being that you must be invited to go inside. And inside, it's an open floor plan with step down, with steps going up or down to divide some of the rooms. The dining room, he designed the table with only 6 people because 6 chairs, because he felt that you can't have an intelligent conversation with more than 6 people. Well, does anybody know why he was fired? The project never actually was finished. He was in Japan working on other projects, and Aline, who was a traveler, she wasn't home very much either. And after 2 years, there just wasn't enough progress made on the house. So she fired him. And eventually the house was donated to the city of LA. This is a special year in LA with many centennials. We've got the Hollywood sign, Warner Brothers, the LA Coliseum, and El Cholo restaurant. The Hollywood sign, I mean, that's obviously very famous. It's iconic. I believe that December 8th is when they're having it, the celebration for it. That's when it officially opened, or was, well, yeah, open. It was called Hollywood Land initially because it was used for real estate. And because it became so popular, they shortened the name and just kept Hollywood up there. Warner Brothers, it wasn't that well known initially and became famous with the 1927 The Jazz Singer. It has studio tours, which I think they do a really good job with the studio tours. And again, I try to encourage visitors, my friends, to go and see a little bit more of authentic Hollywood. The LA Memorial Coliseum is really what brought pro sports teams to the West Coast. And it's the home field for the USC Trojans, and it's held many important events, including 2 Olympic Games, 2 Super Bowls, and it's been a political venue. In El Cholo, I had the pleasure of speaking with Ron Salisbury, who's the grandson of the original owners, and he started working at the restaurant at age 12, working his way up. Their employees are very loyal, and they have people who've been there for decades. Rock Haven was a place I hadn't heard of, actually. It was one of the discoveries, founded by Agnes Richards, and she was a psychiatric nurse. Back then, women who were in mental hospitals were not treated well. A man, if he wanted a divorce, could have his wife committed to an institution. So Agnes opened this place it's Glendale, actually. And she bought several houses in a residential neighborhood, of course, and turned them all inward so they would have courtyards and gardens. The Lady of Rock Haven is the mascot, the little statue in the front there. I took a walking tour of it, and it still is decorated, or the architecture from the 1930s. The rooms have old tiles. And if you take the tour, they often will conduct tours. You'll see some personal effects from the women who live there. Now, the women who did live there, because it's no longer a sanitarium, they were called residents, never patients. Marilyn Monroe's mom was a resident, and she was known as an escape artist. She didn't know she actually had the right to leave whenever she wanted. So she would have little sneaky ways. And if you take the tour, they'll show you the little window in her closet where she one time snuck out, and they found her, of course. Right now, it's kind of in flux. So the city of Glendale bought the property, and the plan is to maybe have a library or a park. But I'm told that plans aren't moving forward yet. But it's a lovely place if you get a chance to go visit. This was a fun one. I took my kids here during the research. Highland Park Bowl. I think it's great that it opened during Prohibition. I love the story. If you visit, or if you've been there, it's a 2-story facility. Just from the outset, even, I like it. The garage door that opens up, and when you step inside, to the left is a candy machine with candy from the 1930s. Obviously just strictly for decor, but it's a great bowling alley. And back then, so pharmacists could write or fill prescriptions for medicinal alcohol so that people could bowl, listen to live music. And if you go there, you can just imagine what it must have been like, because the elements they have, when it was restored, they retained a lot of the original elements. The Brunswick pin machines, you can tell from these photos, as you're bowling, you can see them, spinning around, going up and down, which is something you don't see anymore in contemporary bowling alleys. I enjoyed the tour at the Hollywood Museum. What makes it historic, of course, it's that it's inside the Max Factor building, and in the lobby are the dressing rooms of Marilyn Monroe, Lucille Ball, a few other, famous stars with the original makeup. Max Factor is credited with creating the tube lipstick, pancake makeup. Oh, and there are separate dressing rooms for the blondes, redheads, and brunettes. And I'm wondering how many of you have had an opportunity to see this mural by David Sicaro. He was commissioned to paint a tropical scene, but what he did instead, he painted Maya ruins, an overgrown jungle with armed revolutionary soldiers, a crucified Indian figure, and an American eagle overhead. So the mural was whitewashed for 30 years. Over time, and just because of the weather, it started to reappear. It was peeling, and the Getty Conservation Institute and the city of LA partnered to not restore it because it was too fragile, but to conserve it. And if you visit, and as Danny knows, the hours aren't very long, but you would access it, the viewing station, you walk up some stairs, and then you have a pretty good view, but it looks faded because it actually is. But this is a photo I was able to take on the day that I was finally able to get in. And those are just some of the highlights, actually. I mean, I kind of went through it quickly. There are a lot more. There's a lot more in the book, but I wanted to show you some little variety, some, diverse snapshots. And I think that will be it. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Mimi. That was excellent.
Yeah, I kind of breezed through it, but thank you.
That's all right. It was great. Action-packed. Here, I'll share a link here for everyone in the chat where you can order a copy of Mimi's book, Oldest Los Angeles. You can also, on our website there, follow along. She have her Instagram and other socials. So thank you so much. We've got some questions here, and if people want, they can continue to add some using the Q&A there. So let me just grab a couple of the questions that came in here. Some just some clarification. Someone was asking where Evergreen Cemetery is, and over in Boyle Heights. Someone asked, oh, what the Golden Gopher did during Prohibition. So how they managed to get by.
To serve alcohol in coffee cups is what I was told. Very creative ways, right?
But yeah. Yeah, and I know San Antonio Winery is one too that managed to get through with producing sacramental wine.
Exactly, exactly.
And someone was asking too about Mr. T's Bowl, the Highland Park bowl is yeah, it was Mr. T's bowl there for
Exactly. Yeah, I usually go a little bit more into length about that. He, completely changed it. And so made it because in the 1980s, apparently, bowling alleys were diminishing. And so Highland Park Bowl became more of a music venue, and the lanes were covered up. There was a local mural, which actually you can still see it, but it was covered up as well. So with the lanes covered up, um, it just took away a lot of, it was no longer a bowling alley. And then a group came in, and the 1933 group, that's what they do. They go around and help restore historic places. And they're the ones who brought it back to its, original charm.
yeah, definitely.
I have the address for the cemetery, by the way. It's actually on Evergreen Avenue in Los Angeles. So um, that's as much as I remember where it was.
Yeah. Um, Great. And I have Michael Holland had a question too, just asking about this is kind of applies, I think, to some other things too. So the Pico House down there at La Plaza is technically older than the hotel on Catalina. Um, but he's asking, is the question about functional or operating. And I suspect that's probably something you ran into with, I know, having written about sort of oldest things, there's often, disputes over, oh, well, it's the oldest continually operating or, the oldest, different definitions. So I don't know if there's anything particularly about that question.
Yeah, that was the most challenging thing is verifying if something is the oldest. Is it the oldest Mexican restaurant? Is it the oldest hotel? In Hollywood, the Roosevelt Hotel is the oldest hotel. The Pico House, it was LA's first three-story building and luxury hotel, but it's no longer a hotel. So that's why I didn't include it as the oldest hotel, oldest operating hotel. At the time, I'm just looking at in the book. It has a lot more information actually about all this. I mean, it had
Sure.
80 bedrooms, 21 parlors, and back then even bathrooms and water closets on each floor. It's not open. I've actually never been inside. I
Um,
think they use some things, but just like
Dying,
oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, dying to get in there. Yeah, there's just been lots of talk about trying to bring it back, but
That would be really
nothing
cool.
definitive yet. Yeah, and I suspect, something like Philippe's and Cole's too. It's, that's probably one of the most sort of debated one. A lot of people, have strong opinions on it. Were there other ones like that where there was kind of, a very like contested, you know, and we claim that we're the oldest, or is that kind of the big one?
Not really. No, I was kind of surprised. The closest thing is that someone from Pasadena told me that there's a Mexican restaurant there that is a little bit older than El Cholo, the one that I chose to write about. But in that case, I was choosing in LA, and just the fact that um, it was just a fascinating story, I thought, and I like the way the restaurant is built when I went to have lunch there, and it just has a very homey feel. So I felt like it worked. But actually, no, I haven't had anybody dispute, some of the other dates.
Yeah.
Because there's always a reason for everything, right? Just like the Merced Theater, also in El Pueblo down there, um, that um, I didn't include it on its own as the oldest theater because it's no longer open right now, right? And it's used actually for storage, is my understanding, from the city, I believe.
Right. Yeah, and I think some other folks were mentioning, oh yeah, about Pico House, nowhere near restored, but yeah, used for special events on the first floor in the courtyard. So I have to keep an eye out for those. Uh,
Yeah. I know
East
I
Side
can't.
Deli, yeah, East Side Deli. And oh, someone's asking, what place was perhaps the most intimidating or scariest place that you visited for the book?
Yeah, let me just think a moment, because the first thing that comes to mind would be Rockhaven Sanitarium, because it does have kind of a spooky feel. It's run down, it hasn't been maintained, and it's both lovely and scary at the same time, because you can I would imagine what it must have looked like back then when it had green gardens and water in the fountains, and when the rooms for the time were pretty comfortable. And now it just looks like this old haunted, and of course on the private tour there, if you take a tour, they'll tell you that there are some haunted stories. um, but maybe that one, maybe Rockhaven.
Yeah, I could see that. Um, let's see. Someone's asking, Kathy was asking, do you include the oldest hospital in the book?
I do not. I do not have the oldest hospital.
Sure, there's a lot of
That's
oldest things that only room for
right.
so
There's so many. Maybe if there's like a part two to the book, follow up.
everybody
Oldest
buys
100.
enough copy, buy Mimi's book and request for this the sequel.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, there really just was so much. I mean, oldest public market, oldest flower market, oldest winery, um, oldest funicular railway, which we all know what that is, oldest firehouse, which, is at El Pueblo. Um, I didn't really talk about, I mean, it's in my book, but the oldest fossil dig site, La Brea tar pits, is amazing.
no,
There's just a variety in here.
definitely.
I'm happy to answer more questions.
Yeah, I think, and oh yeah, I should share there. You had a comment about she's on the board of the San Fernando Valley Historical Society, and the Andres Pico adobe is the oldest adobe in the San Fernando Valley and the second oldest city of Los Angeles. So
And I
yeah,
really wanted to include that. That's true. I think I mentioned that as a sidebar. So yeah, some of the things that I couldn't include um, as vignettes. So each oldest place has 2 pages with photos, which I took most of the photos, and then there's a sidebar. So I was able to squeeze in some information. And I mentioned the San Fernando Valley Historical Society, in the San Fernando Valley section of the book.
yeah, and I know it's from personal experience, it can be a challenge trying to sort of fit everything that you want to fit into the book within the constraints of, what the publisher's looking for and just an interest of length. And there's so many great places around LA to include, but can't fit it all in the one book.
Can't put it all.
Um,
But the
Mhm.
sidebars were helpful for that,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Pebla had a question about just what you know about the Charles Loomis house.
Mhm.
Chance to.
Yeah, so I took a drive by it. I don't know if I was able to include the information. I may have included it within the museum page, the Southwest Museum. Trying to see real quickly if I did include that.
Right.
Yes, I did. Yeah, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, Charles Loomis built a craftsman-style stone house in the northeastern section of the city bordering Arroyo Seco. It's known as El Alisal or Alder Grove. And I have the address here, 200 East Avenue, 43. That's what I mean. That would be an example of how I would, squeeze in some
Sidebar.
additional.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really cool one to check out for sure. Um, Oldest running movie studio. Someone's asking.
Which I believe is Paramount, and I do have that in here. Okay, just off the top of my head, I don't remember the year, but I can quickly see if I have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, oldest operating Hollywood studio.
There you go.
It's in,
Yeah, they're asking there was the former Raleigh studios. So there's also Prospect Studios in Silver Lake. But I think there's, sometimes also there's like continually operating
well,
and
exactly. And that was tricky as far as the oldest. So in the book, I call it the oldest continuously operating Hollywood studio, Paramount Studios. Um, and yeah, then that has its own section. There were so many studios, it was really hard. There's in the San Fernando Valley section, I go into depth a little bit about Universal City, and the creation of it and the history of Universal Studios. So I thought that was very interesting too, just about Universal City itself.
yeah, definitely. Um, let's see. What was maybe the most surprising discovery or something unusual you learned while writing the book?
Hmm. I mean, there were a few, again, Rockhaven, but I don't want to, just focus on that. Rockhaven for sure, though. Well, I think the hotel on Catalina, I've been to Catalina, I've been going there my whole life. And I had never stayed in that hotel before. I didn't realize its history and even the history of World War II on Catalina. So that, for me, the hotel there was a surprise, a fun one. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, did it as so, kind of extend on that, as you mentioned, a lifelong Angeleno, and I'm sure many folks who've joined us tonight are as well. What's kind of, you know, something about the book that you see maybe as would be great or exciting for someone who maybe thinks, oh, I'm pretty familiar with LA, grew up here. What are kind of some of the things you think could be great for them to learn from the book?
Well, I think that there are probably things in there that maybe people aren't as familiar with, but maybe more so the way it's written. The book starts off with a walking tour of El Pueblo. Um, I tried to combine travel and history a little bit. Um, and then within each vignette, I just try to put in some little fun facts. Um, Trying to see if I can just find something real quickly. Well, okay, here's an example where maybe it was kind of a stretch, but I had never been there before, but I think a lot of people maybe are familiar with Galco's Old World Grocery. And the owner is an interesting person to talk to, John. He told me about how he and his dad, in fact, the way I started off is that Louis Neese and his son John had to agree to disagree in order to keep their family business running, because John wanted to, being the son, wanted to stay relevant and bring in all these sodas, which he just loved, collecting sodas. And his dad wanted it to be an old world grocery store.
Mhm.
So I think that, to answer your question, it might be some of the family stories, not just the places themselves,
Yeah.
but the stories. And even like with Fugetsu Do, probably everyone here has heard of it or been there, but did you know, right, that Seiichi Kido is the inventor of the Chinese cookie? So little fun facts like that, I think, is what maybe even native Angelenos could find interesting in my book.
Definitely. Yeah, I know that's something that I found with, my books in the same vein of, exploring the city. And I think it's a great opportunity for, someone, if you've lived here for a long time or all your life, to kind of revisit those places and kind of see how they've changed. And maybe you went as a kid and haven't been back since, but it's a kind of a great reminder for that. And I also find that, with your book, it's great for if you have visitors in town and you're trying to think like, what can we do to kind of shake up the routine, have the book on the coffee table there and people can grab it up and say, all right, let's do a little adventure and head downtown for the, Saturday or something and explore the city, get to know it more.
And I've had people say that they like to use it like, oh, once a week we'll go explore and do, one of the things in the book. And so, for example, if you go out to Santa Clarita to see to Placerita Canyon to look at the tree where the gold was discovered, while you're in Santa Clarita, there are other historic places. The oldest restaurant actually is out here, Saugus Cafe. It's a diner serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And reasonable prices, just huge portions. It's by the train tracks. So when you're sitting there, just like way back in the day, because it was built for travelers. And so it's still it did move a few feet away, but it's more or less in the same location. And then, so if you think of it that way, that you're doing little day trips, you could go also while you're out in Santa Clarita, has a ghost town, Mentryville, if you've heard of it. And it's the oldest oil boom town, I think in California, actually. Yeah, from 1876 to 1900. And there was a town built around the oil well, Pico #4. If you go there now, it's not a whole town, but there are still some of the buildings. And even the setting is kind of spooky because it's up in the mountains, away from everything. Even though it's maybe just a 10-minute drive from the freeway, you really feel like you're out in the boonies somewhere. And every time I go, it's always a little bit windy, and you could just imagine, families back then. It's an interesting place to visit.
Yeah, it's really cool. Let's see if we had any other last questions here. I think we're just kind of sharing some great things in the chat. Um, Someone was asking about the Banning Museum, used as inspiration for the Haunted Mansion. Um, yeah, I mean, lots to explore. I think someone's asking about if the Lancashire train depot in North Hollywood is included in the book.
So I considered it, but I didn't. No, it is not this time around.
Yeah, come
I
back.
can't remember exactly what it was. I started doing research on it, and then I did not
Yeah,
on
yeah,
my
and I
list.
mean, part of the challenge, it's like you want to include so much and kind of have to pick and choose a bit um but um but yeah, that's a fun one to explore.
Well,
uh
just like I didn't feature Union Station, that really could have had its own vignette, but instead I put it again as a sidebar to El Pueblo, just so I could get some
uh,
information. Yeah.
Definitely. Excellent. Well, yeah, I think so questions are kind of slowing down here. But again, I want to thank you so much for everyone for joining us. um and thank you so much to Mimi. Here, I just moved my screen. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Um, oh, someone was asking if you could share your email.
Yes. Yes, please. So I thought I put it here.
If you want to do it in the chat, or I could pull it up to.
Okay, I'm not seeing a chat box for myself.
Yeah, do you want, I can just share it here. Do you want, it's your Gmail
Yeah,
address?
yeah, M Slawoff
Great.
at gmail.com.
Share that.
Yeah.
Also
Yeah.
put the
Oh yeah, now.
your website back in there just one more time so everybody has it handy.
Yeah, yeah, it's just
And
me.
yeah. So
And
thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you Mimi. And as I say, please keep an eye on our website. We will be posting some more upcoming events there shortly, including as Mike mentioned at the top, our upcoming tour of the LA City Archives. So please follow along there, and if you are interested in joining as a member, we'd greatly appreciate that. So I'll drop that link one more time, give you guys a chance to join us and follow along and join for the next meeting. And we hope to see you all soon.
thank you, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.